Table 9, the arithmetic of a disownment. All right, let's jump right into this explainer because this story is wild. Picture this for a second. You are sitting down for your 25th birthday dinner, but instead of balloons and a cake, the air is just incredibly thick with this careful, deadly politeness. You know the kind of politeness people use right before they read a verdict. You're at this upscale restaurant, sitting directly across from the parents who raised you, but the temperature at the table, it doesn't feel like a celebration at all. Actually, it feels exactly like a legal deposition. We are looking at a true story of family, betrayal, and honestly, a meticulously planned checkmate.
Just listen to this chilling quote. "My mother smiled when she said they'd only kept me for the benefits." I mean, play that line in your head for a second. The absolute cruelty there isn't just in the words themselves, it's in the smile. Our protagonist here, Paige Mercer, was exactly 25 the night her parents took her to dinner to essentially tell her she was no longer useful to them. And this wasn't some heated, emotional breakdown. No, this was a scheduled termination of a contract she didn't even know she was a part of. They had already filed the paperwork to cut her out of everything. So it really begs the question, what do you actually do when the people who raised you invite you to dinner just to erase you? Well, if you're Paige Mercer, you don't cry, you don't scream. You just sit there quietly because you are already miles and miles ahead of them. You see, what her adoptive parents completely failed to realize as they sat across from her, dripping with this rehearsed cruelty, was that her true family, her biological mother, grandmother, and brother, were sitting silently in the shadows, literally just 3 tables away.
The arithmetic of cruelty. To really understand how Paige could be so flawlessly composed in the face of this ambush, we have to look at what she calls the arithmetic of cruelty. Growing up in the Mercer household meant learning some deeply traumatic childhood math. Love in that house wasn't freely giving, it was strictly calculated. Paige learned very, very early on that she was essentially being treated as a depreciating asset. She was just a line item on a ledger, kept around only as long as the math worked out in her parents' favor.
And that childhood math was staggering. To put it into perspective, for Paige's birthday, she'd get 1 candle pressed into a sweating, unrefrigerated grocery store cupcake. But then, just 3 weeks later, her biological cousin Brett got a rented bounce house and caterers carrying silver trays. Why the difference? Simply because Brett was blood. When 8-year-old Paige asked for a party, she was told, with that fake sweetness, "We can only do one nice thing a month, honey." That taught her a vital, super dark lesson. A child who asks for less is cheaper.
Being easy felt like the only currency I had. What's absolutely fascinating here is how Paige weaponized her own utility just to survive. She noted that since being easy was her only currency, she just stopped asking for things entirely. She made the math incredibly easy for everyone. She left home at 18, put herself through school, and became a razor-sharp paralegal, specializing in, get this, trusts and estates. She spent her days entirely inside other people's wealth, organizing exactly what happens when someone dies. She could read a complex trust document the way you or I might read a face. And ironically, she became an absolute expert at establishing legal boundaries. Those skills were about to become her greatest weapon.
The pivot. Then came the turning point. The only adult in the entire Mercer family who ever treated Paige like an actual human being instead of, a rental property was her grandmother, Nana Ruth. Nana Ruth used to tell her she was chosen, not collected. But when Nana died when Paige was 23, everything began to shift. The whole family got quiet. Texts suddenly took days to return. The word blood started being casually thrown around in the family group chat, very clearly meant to exclude her. The temperature in the family dropped all at once in this highly coordinated fashion. Okay, so here is how the ticking clock timeline breaks down leading up to that explosive dinner. 6 months out, Paige officially registered with the State Adoption Reunion Registry. 8 weeks after that, a letter arrived from Susan Hale, her biological mother, who wrote this beautiful line, "I never stopped saving you a seat." And then, just 3 days after that, while waiting on her own records, Paige used her professional legal skills to pull the public file on Nana's estate from the county system. Think about that, 2 envelopes in one single week. One telling her exactly where she came from, and the other revealing exactly what her adoptive parents were about to lose. 25. Everything, the whole shebang, revolved around this one massive number. When Paige read her grandmother's trust distribution schedule, the truth hit her like an absolute freight train. The trust, which was administered by a bank, paid her adoptive parents a monthly caregiver distribution for raising her. But here's the kicker. That distribution explicitly terminated upon Paige's 25th birthday, and at that exact moment, the entire remainder of the trust passed directly to her, not to her parents, to Paige. Their disownment was theater performed on the wrong stage. And this brings us right back to the tension of that restaurant. Her mother, who had literally never once managed to organize a birthday cake, suddenly books a nice corner table to celebrate Paige turning 25 properly. Paige realized instantly that their cruelty was entirely in the planning. Her parents were rushing to officially disown her on the exact day their caregiver payouts dried up. But as Paige so perfectly put it, they were performing theater on the wrong stage. They sat there thinking they held all the power, completely unaware that Paige had read their script 6 months ago. The trap is sprung. So we're back at the table. After delivering her icy little monologue about only keeping Paige for the financial benefits, her mother just stops and watches her. She's waiting for a total collapse. She's waiting for the sobbing, devastated girl. But instead, Paige just takes a slow, calm sip of water. Then right on cue, her father reaches into his fancy leather portfolio and slides a thin sheath of papers across the white tablecloth. A tidy little document designed to have me agree on the record that I had no claim. This document was the ultimate culmination of their trap, a waiver. They wanted her to agree, legally and on the record, that she had been notified and had absolutely no claim to their estate. But here is the massive, fatal legal blunder her parents made. They had so arrogantly aimed their expensive little legal knife at their own relatively modest will. They spent good money cutting her out of an estate that was entirely beside the point, while leaving Nana's trust, where the actual millions lived, completely untouched. They were, legally speaking, suing the wrong defendant. Now watch this masterclass in cinematic precision as Paige counters their ambush. She doesn't yell, she doesn't make a scene at all, she simply opens her own plain manila folder and lays out 3 exhibits on the table, side by side. Step 1, a retainer letter on firm letterhead, proving she's already represented by legal counsel. Step 2, the distribution schedule of the Ruth Mercer Family Trust, highlighting the exact clause where she inherits everything at 25. And Step 3, her original birth certificate, proudly displaying her biological mother's name. Total, devastating silence just falls over the table. They wanted a disownment. You see, her parents had orchestrated this entire evening for one reason. They wanted a quiet, highly controlled severance with absolutely no loose ends. They wanted to discard her the very second she stopped generating income for them. And they wanted her to sign away her rights while she was supposedly too blinded by grief to read the fine print. I wanted a witness, but Paige wanted a witness. She knew for a fact that the truth lands so much harder when it's spoken out loud in front of people than when it's just mailed in some cowardly letter. She knew she was about to strip them of their power, their money, and their precious illusion of control. And she orchestrated the precise seating geometry of that restaurant to ensure they could not hide from it. 3. Just 3 tables away, sitting near the back, in the warm, low light of the dining room, was a party of 3 under the name Paige Mercer. It was Susan, her biological mother, Pearl, her incredibly fierce biological grandmother, and Danny, her half-brother. They had been sitting there the entire time. They had ordered quietly, barely eaten a thing, and watched her adoptive mother deliver the most cruel, venomous sentences of Paige's entire life. Doing the resemblance math. As Paige calmly announces to her adoptive mother that her real family is sitting right behind her, the cinematic tension in that room just peaks. Her mother slowly turns around in her chair, the cashmere shoulders rotate. She locks eyes with Susan, and you can see the exact terrifying moment the adoptive mother does the resemblance math. It's the sheer terror of realizing that the family she just confidently claimed Paige didn't have was sitting 15 feet away, witnessing every single unforgivable word she had just said. "We saved you a seat. We always did." What happens next is just a moment of pure, triumphant power. The biological family, Susan, Pearl, and Danny, stand up in unison. They don't scream or make a scene. They just stand up, the exact same way you stand up for someone arriving at an airport gate after a really long flight. And Susan speaks the very words she had written in that first letter. "We saved you a seat. We always did." In that moment, they offered her the unconditional belonging she had been denied for a quarter of a century. The final document. Paige stands up to leave. At this point, her adoptive mother's mask completely shatters, and she literally begins screaming across the dining room, completely losing the tight control she prized above everything else. But Paige, she doesn't even raise her voice. She just leaves the trust distribution schedule sitting face up on the white cloth right in front of her mother. It is a cold, absolutely devastating exit. She leaves him sitting there with the financial ruin they brought entirely upon themselves, and she walks out with the family that actually wanted her. So we're wrapping up this explainer with a thought that really should echo long after you finish watching. If someone in your life only shows up when you are useful to them, when you are generating value for them, what is the true cost of keeping your seat at their table? Paige Mercer learned the hard way that sometimes the absolute only way to win a rigged game is to calmly slide your chair back, leave the math on the table, and just walk away. Thanks so much for exploring this incredible true story with me. Until next time, keep questioning the arithmetic of the relationships around you.